Hello and welcome back. We're starting in Spark mode again to give anyone who has not watched Season 2 of The Mandalorian one last opportunity to exit the video before we get into any spoiler discussion. My name is Rich and let's get started. In this video, I'll discuss my design considerations for the Magistrate's residence, the industrial complex, and surrounding scenery. Before we do that, we'll just review our use of terrain blocks here first. So come over to the corner of the town and we'll pick up this terrain block. Show that we used a large flat terrain block, same that we used for the forest build. And for the theme we set it to buried treasures. Came 3 across. Notice once again that the city wall sits right on the edge between the town terrain blocks and the forest terrain blocks set to the Halloween town theme. And then we went 4 deep. And then 3 across the back here. So what I'm doing is just highlighting the surrounding terrain that creates the edges of the town and surrounding areas of the Magistrate's residence and the town itself. That brings us back to the beginning. But we had to leave room to put our pawns on either side of the Magistrate's central walkway. So we use these long flat terrain blocks, one here on this side of the town. Noting here again that this wall sits on the seam along that particular terrain block. Just showing how these terrain blocks are fitting in together. And then as we come over to this side where the residence is, we once again had to use one of these long flat terrain blocks. And then again showing the larger terrain blocks to either side. Underneath the pond is one of these large flat terrain blocks set just to be the base for the pond area. And then sitting on top of that, we have these smaller, small and thin terrain blocks, 4 of them along each side. And we'll move along here with the spark mode just to kind of show how those blocks fit in. There we go. And that fits right up against the edge of this particular block. And then we have these 4 small and thin terrain blocks again along this side of the pond. And that fits in alongside our long flat terrain block there. Alright, underneath, to fill in the gaps underneath the pond, we have this large flat terrain block, and it sits directly underneath the pond. Notice when it's flat, it doesn't give the room for the pond, so it has to be moved down a position of 1 block to accommodate the pond, the depth of the pond, which I used 1 block depth for that. And you can see the water pieces underneath there as well as the walkway. And then again, from a level position, it's 1 block down. And there's our boss fight. So you want to make sure this area is wide enough to fit the boss fight logic box, because it takes up a sizable amount of space. That's the key to designing this area. Now once again showing here a couple of screenshots that I used for inspiration when designing the Magistrate's residence, noting the round building in particular, as well as the 2 ponds. So the next thing we'll take a look at here is the rest of the blocks that we use to create the wall and the walkway as well as the water. So we have this Jakku outpost archway as a cover there. There were some similar shaped covers on either side of the pond, so I just repeated these Jakku outpost archways on either side to represent that. Go ahead and move this particular trigger area out of the way. That trigger area is connected to this first door to deactivate the door until the enemy waves are completed inside the town. Then you'll be able to enter the magistrate's residence for the boss fight. This door here is the second door, has no logic connected to it. It's free to open and close. And we're using our 1x1 blocks here set to the castle theme again, same as we did for the main main entrance gate at the front of the town. So just again here showing some of the design considerations here. 4 blocks here on either side of the doors. And then the long block, 1x3 blocks in a 2x3 pattern here. And then we went 11 across this side. That's the 11th block. And let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 across the back. Then just for spacing we had to use some 1x1 blocks here to fill in the gap, and then use the 1x3 long blocks again all the way back to the front wall of the magistrate's residence. Alright, wherever I didn't use terrain blocks, so once again I used these 1x3 blocks set to the castle theme just to fill in the gaps underneath the wall leading to the walkway, as well as the to line the sides of the 2 ponds. So you see we have 3 there, 3 here side by side. Had to get a little creative with fitting these in. This one goes lengthways. And then 3 across this way here again. Then we lined the pond. There's actually 1 to the left, so that's the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, 6th, 7, and there's 1 more straight ahead right there, 8. 8 along the side there. And then you had a terrain block to the left. And then once again was just filling in with these 1x3 blocks. Underneath the entrance to the magistrate's home or residence. And we once again 6 along the side here, each side of the pond. The middle you can leave empty because it's going to be covered with the large flat floor plates. Once again set to castle brick. And these 3x3 floor plates we go 6 across to create a nice even floor for the central walkway, and that's where our boss fight will take place. And then again we have these 1x3s lining the far ends of the far edges of the ponds. Back to our 3x3 floor plate set to the water theme. It's actually right next to the tin roof that we use to theme our blocks that we use for the roofs in the town. So tin roof and water are right next to each other. And there's actually 1 to fill in the gap that goes underneath there. I'm having a little trouble pointing to it with my spark mode, but these are side by side. They go 6 across, just like the floor plates, and 2 wide. And that's repeated on both sides for the ponds. Okay, so that is that part of the build. In this next segment, we're going to discuss the basic design of the magistrate's residence. We use the Hangar 94 walls here from the Tatooine building group to create the circular base. Just grabbing the tower over here so I can grab the docking bay 94 curved wall. It's the one that does not have the hangar door opening. And it fits in there like that. And then to create the circular base, you just rotate it right on around. And that gives you your circular base for the building. Of course, it now has that circular opening in the middle, which will fill in with the 3x3 flat blocks. And they'll be connected to a path that is run right through the center of that opening. For the saucer-shaped top of the building, also from building group 5, the droid factory pillar 2 here, and then underneath it, just to fill in space, I use the pillar 1. These just sit in the opening. They are not connected to the path. The pillar block here at the base of the antenna, just to create some height for the antenna. And we use the Endor hangar wall theme for that. I also use that same theme for these 4 3x3 flat blocks here. Not the greatest antenna, but I use this Hoth antenna, also from building group 5, for the top of it. And then in the dead center of the circular opening between the 4 hangar sections, created a path. Turn the path off so that you connect the blocks without them moving. And you just draw that path straight down. Doesn't matter how far you draw it down. And we have these 4 3x3 flat blocks going across, filling in the circular opening. When they're connected to the path, then you have to come adjust the properties. Toy box path, horizontal, use 6, vertical 1, and backward offset a +6 for this particular block. They're each a little different, but as you attach each block individually to the path, you'll start to see a pattern for the properties. This one was +6, +1, and then -6. And this one here, again, just adjusting properties to put it in a proper place. -6, 1, -6. So you can see how a pattern develops, and you can kind of guess what the last one's going to be. -6, 1, and +6 is what it's going to be. See if I guessed correctly. Hey, I got it right. So you can see that when you do this enough times, you do start to see a pattern, and it helps you set the paths as you place your blocks to create the pattern that you need. I also used these basic blocks to create a doorway. Just going to grab this piece here so we don't interfere with the path. If I would have chosen that half dome there. So we use this curve block. I used that to cover the door. There was a curved shape there, and it was green in color. I didn't use green here. The fantasy building theme matches the color of the hangar building more closely. There we go. Fantasy cottage stucco is what I used. I used that for that top piece, as well as the small wall flat pieces on either side of the door. And then for the door itself, it's these small wall pieces. And just like our main gate door, I used the kiln theme. I like the look of that for doors. Nice metallic look and a nice design on it. And those are stacked on top of each other, 2 by 2. for that doorway entrance, all of those blocks are connected to a path. And of course, once again, that path is turned off. You'll have to play around with the properties to get those blocks in position. It'll largely depend upon where you created your path at. I'm not going to go into those details here. It just takes a bit of experimentation in that, showing where I drew my path tool down to. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the various decorations and pieces we used inside the residence area here. In each of the four corners there were these saucer-shaped structures. So once again we went back to building group 5 to the droid factory pillars. And we'll show what we used here again. The pillar 1 and the saucer section, the pillar 2. I didn't want to grab that with spark mode in case it would turn red because of the trees there. So showing that, and we did that in 2 front corners as well as twice on either side of the residence itself here. Kind of mimicking those shaped structures that were inside the residence area. These Mos Espa antennas on top of each, just for cool decorations. Inside the ponds there were stones, large rocks you could see. I used the Dunbrook rocks. They were a good match. Just kind of randomly placed them around. Wasn't trying to be overly concerned with their placement. And then this kiln machinery was a nice piece for the to represent the pumps in the water. And if you notice from the episode, there's some various different shape types of pumps in that inside the pond, so I mixed it up a little bit. Another one here. Once again, going back to the kiln pieces like we used in town, they were a good match for this particular build. Some more of the Dunbrook rocks. Some more pumps up here in this area above the pond. Once again, back to the kiln decorations. I've used Fantasy Terrain here 4, set it to the Tatooine theme just to put an antenna there. There's various hardware and antennas along the wall, so didn't go too crazy with it, but wanted to have something there to fill in the space. And there were trees on either side, trees and bushes. Once again, like we scattered around in the forest area, we used these Dunbrook, various sizes of the trees and bushes. Used the large tree, the medium, and the small tree. Once again, just kind of randomly scattered them around. Same for the bushes, the Dunbrook bushes. Used the large, medium, and small sizes. Try and twist the angles around so they all don't look like they're oriented the same exact way. There were some stones up in this area as well as on the opposite side. Once again, trying to make it somewhat random and not repetitive. There were some towers in the background. I used these Docking Bay 94 small towers in the back here. A couple of Death Star pipes. Just interesting decorations. Doesn't have to be exact. Just representing the idea of kind of what you see in the episode. Again, used these towers outside the tall tower as well as the smaller towers. As just some background scenery. There was a lot of towers you could see around the town beyond the area of the town where the main action of the episode took place. So we'll keep moving on to the rest of our build here. So in our final segment here, we'll take a look at the build for the industrial complex as seen in the background of the city in that screenshot, as well as the surrounding city area. Just a quick look at the basic design. Not too detailed. The player isn't meant to come here, just wanted a basic shape of an industrial complex. Needed to get it up high enough to be able to see it adequately, so I went with these long flat terrain blocks as a base. Originally I had the factory sitting on top of that, but it wasn't as high as I wanted it, so I ended up going with these small and thin terrain blocks. I used the Death Star theme to color them, and so I had to move all the pieces up, and then still decided that it wasn't tall enough, so I stacked another one on top. Showing here once again the Imperial Station, Space Station theme, just to have something dark looking. And so still wasn't high enough to my liking, so I had to once again redo the factory and move it up another spot here. For the factory itself, large glass skyscraper pieces. I used those. It was a nice selection to create a factory looking shape. 3 across there on the left hand side, and then back to our basic block drawer, the tall 1x3 tall blocks and a 4x4 pattern. And I used the steel theme for all of the basic blocks in the factory design here. So steel, you can just set your theme to that. And went 4 across here, and like I said, it's a 4x4 cube. You can leave the center empty, don't have to fill it in. Showing here how I built the blocks around, and that was just to create a base for this Death Star tower. Good piece for the factory, adds interesting look and shapes, particularly from a distance, and with this particular themed sky, which is a bit dark and dingy to begin with. Used another one over here. Tried to orient it in a different way than the one in the center there, just to make it look a little different as you view it from the distance. And back to our basic blocks, set to the steel theme, a square block at the base here, and then the long wedge blocks, just interesting shapes. Not that you necessarily see those all those details from the distance, but just going for something interesting looking to give the suggestion that this is a large manufacturing facility. Once again, these long wedge blocks and upside down wedge blocks to create these shafts, these slanted shafts. There were 2 of them you could see in the factory in the background of the episode. And then these round blocks at the top of the smokestacks. Again, using these wedge blocks. And back to our building set group 2 large glass skyscraper pieces. And went 3 across on this side as well, stacked 1 on top. And then these pillar blocks again to make this particular smokestack, just trying to make it look a little bit different, not always repeating the same shapes of using the Death Star pipes like I did for the other smokestacks. And then the small glass skyscraper pillars here, just creating some interesting shapes on top of the building, just to make it not look so regular. Two effects generators here connected to a level starter, and each one has 3 locators. This one, I believe, is our smoke effect. So on catalyzed smoke, yep, smoke plume. So that's repeated 3 times for our smoke plumes, and that's the upper locators connected to that. And like I said, I just do this on a level starter. I don't bother to shut them off during the enemy waves. It's not a factor for me on memory. If your memory's running short, you may need to turn these effects generators off as enemy waves are generated. Once again, on the level starter, catalyze, play looped, and this is our fire effect, smoldering fire. And that was also connected to 3 locators for each of the 3 pillars. The unfortunate part is when you're any distance away from this factory, you can't see the flames. They become invisible. You can only see the smokes. But I like the flame, so I decided to keep it. Like I said, it wasn't costing me too much on memory. So if the player does come here close to the factory, you'll see the flames underneath the smoke plumes. Then there were tall towers in the background of the city. So once again went back to Group 5 here. Used these droid factory pillars and saucer-shaped pillars. It was a common theme, building design theme in the City of Calodan in this particular episode of The Mandalorian. I scattered a few of these tall towers in the background. Now, to give the illusion that the city's much bigger than the playable area where the player will engage the various enemy waves, the Halloween town, you don't really see much of it, particularly with the height of the wall. You kind of just see the tops of it, but it gives a nice effect for that the town is much bigger, the city's much bigger, and it adds depth to the town. And you don't have to go crazy with adding layers and layers and layers of these Halloween town facades. I used various sized ones. I kind of mixed them up and rotated them around different orientation, so they always weren't the same. Building set Group 3 here is where you can find these. So showing just the various ones that I used. And it just, from when you're inside the town and inside the magistrate's residence, I mean, you're mostly concerned with the gameplay, fighting the enemies, but the little glimpses you see of this, it does add that depth to the city and makes it look a little bigger. I use these terrain blocks again just for this one row of Halloween Town facades, just to raise it up a little bit. So not overtly noticeable while you're playing the game, but the little glimpses you do get of it, of these Halloween Town facades, it does add to the depth. So I previously moved my boss generator up there to get it out of the way, so we'll bring that back down, and that sits in there like that. As I said previously, you want to make sure that your area for the pond is wide enough to fit that, and we can move our trigger area back in. So that wraps up the last of our build videos. I hope I've given everyone a good idea of what my design considerations are. I didn't go into exact detail. That was on purpose, because everyone should design their map the way they want it to look, what looks best to you. You can see what the ideas that I had. My next video will get into more detail on how we structure the logic. Fairly simple structure. I don't know if it'll be one video. It may be multiple videos. I'll have to see how the timing works out. But that'll be coming next to finish up this series for the Calodan Magistrate. Once again, thanks again, and be safe and be well.